Alrighty, we've got folks trickling in. We'll probably give about 2 minutes. We're seeing these attendees hop in. If you'd like to drop in the chat your name, your organization, what you do for that organization, your title, that would be great for our panelists to know whom they're speaking to. And we'll get started in about 2 minutes. I am Michelle with Convergent, and I'll be passing it over to Joe in just a minute once we've got all the folks in. Alrighty, folks. I'm also going to include a link in the chat to a survey. We would really appreciate if you would take the chance to fill that out once you are off of the webinar itself, and then we will would love to get your feedback. I'm seeing Karen Hayes raised her hand, so I feel she may have something to share.
The chat is disabled. I just wanted to let you know that.
Oh, thank you so much, Karen. I will go in and fix that right now. Um, as I do that, we are right at about 12:01, so I appreciate it, Karen. Thank you. I'll open that chat up right as I pass it over to Joe.
Well, thank you, Michelle, and welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Joe April. I am a senior partner at Convergent Nonprofit Solutions, and we're thrilled today to have a very distinguished panel of four community college leaders across the country to have a conversation about community colleges 2025 year in review and 2026, excuse me, trends to watch. So without any further ado, I'd love for each of these four folks to introduce themselves. And just for the sake of organization, I'll ask each to start. And why don't we start with you, Dr. Rainoni?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm John Rainoni. I'm president of Mountain Gateway Community College. We're in Southwest Virginia, and I've been president for 12 and a half years.
Great. Thanks, John. Dr. Kress?
Hi, Ann Kress, President, Northern Virginia Community College. We're just outside DC. An amazing institution like all of those represented here. We have 6 campuses, serve about 76,000 students, and I've been president of NOVA since January of 2020.
Thank you, Dr. Kress. Dr. Chris Reber?
Hello, wonderful to be with you. I am Chris Reber, president of Hudson County Community College, located in Jersey City, New Jersey. That's on the Hudson River, right across from the Freedom Tower and the shadow of the Statue of Liberty. We serve about 24,000 students annually, very urban, comprehensive campus. I'm finishing my 8th year. My whole career has been in public higher education, 3/4 of it in the 4-year graduate sector, and the last 11 years in the community college sector, which I'm most passionate about. Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, Chris. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Tracy Cruzy, who's in Nebraska, I believe.
Thanks, Joe. Yes, I'm in Northeast Nebraska, Northeast Community College. We are a rural college serving 20 counties in the northeast corner of the state, about 14,000 square miles. So a large district with only about a population of 150,000. So smaller school, but yes, I've been with the college for 14 years. My position is the Vice President of Development and External Affairs. And I've been in the community college space for about 25 years, doing most of that in marketing and fundraising.
Great. Well, thank you. So jumping right in, and as you can see, we have a great cross section of geography, but also size of institutions and experience. So I think this panel is really uniquely qualified to talk about some of the things that we're looking at today. And please remember to throw any questions into chat as we go through this. But
Joe, real
2020,
quick before you go, I'm so sorry, folks.
of course.
Because of the large amount of attendees, it is not allowing us to do the chat, but the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen all the panelists are able to see what you are putting in there. So rather than using the chat, let's go ahead and use the Q&A and add any questions that you have, as well as, like I mentioned,
Okay,
who you are, where you're from, and things like that. So sorry about that,
super.
but I'll pass it back to Joe.
Yeah, no worries. Technology is fun. And talking about change and adapting, 2025 has been a very transformative year in the world and definitely within 2 year in community and technical colleges. Technology, workforce alignment, student engagement. I'd love to hear from each of you, and we'll just start with John. Uh, what's the most significant change that your college or challenge that you've seen in your college in 2025, John, starting with you?
Yeah, so let me just give you a real brief. Chris talked about 23,000 students. I serve about 1,900 students total. So 23% of my workforce is either partially or fully funded by grants. So one of my biggest things this year was and this actually, I was at the ACCWDI last January when we got the word that all TRIO grants might have been eliminated. Well, I have two TRIO grants. And one of them is Talent Search, which goes out for sixth graders and really gets them to college. But the one that was going to affect us is our SSS program, and that was one that we've been fortunate. We've had the SSS program for almost 40 years. The college is 63 years old, and we've had it almost 40 years. That is our tutoring center. That is our services for first generation. We all serve a predominantly first generation students. However, that was something that, and this was January, so we started 2025 off, initially with very concerned because for about 24 hours, there would have been about 13 people I would have had to lay off because of this grant funding. Ironically, later in the year, our grant was up and we got refunded. We were successful in getting refunded. The different language is normally it's for 5 years. However, it's 5 years, but we are funded year to year now. So that is something that we continue to have. And we obviously have online tutoring and other types of things for support services. And I got some other things to talk about with some of the other questions, but that was one of the biggest potential challenge, and still may be a challenge as we sort of move forward.
Yeah, and my guess is that'll be a consistent theme. But Anne, from your perspective, staying in Virginia, what's been the biggest challenge that you've seen at your institution in this past year?
Sure. And I think it's a great question. And it really, I think part of this is around where we're located. So we are located directly outside of DC. So the dislocations in the federal workforce and the government contracting workforce have had a significant impact on our students. And so that's one of the things that we've really been concerned about throughout the fall, right? When we look at our region, it is often and rightly seen as very affluent. But the reality is it's also a very expensive place to live. And NOVA students are 2 to 4 times more likely to come from the lowest income census tracts in our region. And so there is not just the immediate impact on families of somebody losing a job, but then as folks constrict their own spending, right? Our students, 72% of whom are part-time, are working. So they're Uber drivers, they're, Door Dashers, they're working at Walmart, they're working in a restaurant, and then they may see their own jobs go away because those expenditures aren't happening anymore. So that's been one of our concerns throughout the fall is how can we ramp up supports, financial and otherwise, for for the students that we're serving so that they don't get knocked off track by, challenges that were not of their making. The other thing I'll throw in there, and I know we'll have a chance to talk about this, is I think the other issue we've been seeing is that we're seeing a whole new group of students who might already have bachelor's degrees and potentially even master's degrees, who are coming to the community college looking for that skill set that will help them connect to a changing labor market. And especially with the federal dislocations, we're seeing individuals who might not have looked for a job in 15 years, 20 years, who never thought they would be looking for a job, suddenly thrown into the marketplace. And so Nova's really stepped up to help them. So those are some of the things that really have been driving us throughout this year.
Great. No, thank you. Chris, from your perspective, what have been your challenges from your institution?
Couple of overarching challenges. One is just that clearly the national political landscape, the changing political landscape, every day brings new information and challenge and occasionally new opportunity. But just, given the demographic of our students, a third of them were born outside of the United States, 1,500 are learning English while they're first in their families to pursue a degree. Two-thirds, three-quarters are food insecure, housing insecure, and/or homeless. 400 undocumented. Our students feel very vulnerable in the current political environment. We're in metropolitan New York. We see ICE activity around us. So that's definitely, an overarching challenge that our students feel deeply through their personal life experience. A second, of course, is AI, artificial intelligence, and trying to ensure that we as an institution are fully embracing the work of understanding how it can be a force multiplier in achieving our mission, how it can help us achieve effectiveness and efficiency in our operations, but at the same time, how can we mitigate some of the challenges inherent in the technology, ethical, equity, et cetera. Third is we've had an explosion of growth over the last 7 years in short-term micro-credentials, non-credit programs that are nested and into and aligned with credit academic pathways, sort of been the entrepreneurial engine of our college. Now, with Workforce Pell and the priority of the current administration in this area, there's actually some changing opportunity for us. And then finally, I would just say, the work we're doing with Achieving the Dream has been all about an upward trajectory of retention and completion. But it also brings challenges. We're trying to continue to scale up this program to all of our students, 80% of their first in their families to pursue a degree.
No, great points. Tracy, from your perspective, from your institution, what have been your school's greatest challenges?
I really related to the comments that John made about the TRIO program. I think very similarly with our adult education funding, and that funds significant. We have 20 employees that are in serving our adult education students. And when you think about, our region is heavily reliant on migrants and new Americans who need to learn language skills and need some of that upskilling. And so, we focused on that a lot this year and trying to think about how we can plan for other resources to do those things and how we can integrate them into our curriculum. We recently became a SNAP ENT provider, and that is quite an arduous process, but that gets a 50% reimbursement rate back to the college to invest in the things you're already supporting so that we can better serve those adult students. We're really focusing efforts on recreating pathways and those short-term credentials and getting those adult educations with even a micro-credential back into the workplace. We're thinking about how we can shift some of our resources to those high demand areas. For instance, auto body is a great program, but often you don't need that 2-year degree, and the labor market doesn't show the wages at that level. And so how can we take the space that's been dedicated that, still do it through an earn and learn environment or through a different opportunity partnering with businesses, to recreating that space and retooling that space to double the size of our welding. So I mean, it's making tough choices and rethinking about where we're putting our dollars. We've lost a lot of state funding, and you know, the threat is real. That we're in a budget deficit right now, and when you think about something that's coming down from the federal level, we have to think really creatively about those business partnerships. So it's really been a year of retooling and rethinking about how we do things, and really putting the systems in place that will allow us to do that.
And doing it quickly. I think that's one of the themes that I'm hearing from all four. You know, students' lives change in a blink of an eye, and creating and changing programs and finding the funding for them also needs to shift quickly. So let me ask, and Ann, you had mentioned this, to drill down a little bit deeper. You were talking about the demographics and the expectations of students changing, right? And as a large school, and then John, I'll ask you as a smaller school, but as a large school, and how do you shift so quickly to meet these demographic changes? And where do you find funding for that?
No, great question. And I think that, you know, when we look at the changing student demographics, part of it is certainly around age and background, but a lot of it is around that notion of expectations, right? And students, it doesn't matter at this point really what their age is. They want to connect, I'll borrow Tracy's phrase, they want to connect that learning to earning much more quickly. You know, whatever we can do to condense that pathway is critical. So at Nova, we are large. And so one of the ways we do this is by taking advantage of industry recognized credential pathways, is that initial pilot or test market. So when folks in the community come to us, whether they're potential students or potential employers, and present a need, we use that ability through Virginia, what we call Fast Forward, which is a funded state program, to stand up these opportunities very quickly. So I will give you two examples. One is with the federal workforce dislocation, we used Fast Forward as the backbone for what we call Nova Next, which is the new employment exploration and transition program. And individuals who have been unemployed because of that relationship, they go through the local workforce boards, Virginia Works, they come to Nova, they're qualified. We provide them with Fast Forward courses at no cost whatsoever. We're self-scholarshiping those courses for students with $1 million grant that we have. Then what we're also doing is providing them with career coaching, with mentoring, with job placement assistance, right? Really connecting them back into the marketplace. So that's one way we did that, using Fast Forward. And then another good example is because of demographics for all of us, right? I will speak only for myself. I'm not getting any younger. That the demographics of this country is really moving towards the older edge. And so we see a lot of long-term care facilities and senior living facilities popping up around Northern Virginia. They needed a workforce. They needed licensed practical nurses. So they came to the table with us. They offered some funding, some initial funding. They also offered the opportunity to provide scholarships to students. And we leveraged non-credit, again, Fast Forward credentials, to stand up very quickly a Fast Forward LPN program that is subsidized by potential employers. So I do think what you're hearing is this real shift towards these shorter term credentials, micro credentials that have true marketplace value, is something that we're all doing as community colleges. It's a good muscle we have to respond to the needs of our students and our employers, especially at a time when the landscape seems to be shifting very quickly. I will just end by, and Chris already mentioned AI, one of the top certifications that we've been delivering to dislocated workers through Nova Next has been AI certifications, because they're seeing that that's an expectation from employers, but they don't have that certification. So again, I think all of us as community colleges, whether rural or urban, our role is to connect our students to that opportunity.
No, well said. John, from your perspective, same state, but a little bit smaller institution. Are you seeing
A lot
similar
smaller, a
things?
lot smaller.
Well, it's all relative, right?
Yeah. So one thing we saw this fall, which I was so excited about, this fall has been wonderful. We're up 13% in credit enrollment and everything, after frankly having 3 years of really declining on the credit side. Keep that in mind. I'm going to come back to we are still serving, we're actually serving more students, but our credit enrollment went down. Why? Because students wanted everything. I call it this generation tends to want education in a tweet. Okay, they want it in short, 280 characters, short term. Okay, well, Ann talked about our Fast Forward program. So we're the second smallest college in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but for the last 3 years, we were in the top 5 for credentials earned through Fast Forward because students were coming in, and at Mountain Gateway, you can earn your CDL license in less than 60 days and start as a trainee making $42,000, which in our area, that's a living wage for a single person is $42,000. So we said, okay, instead of fighting it, we're going to try to figure out how we can convert some of our credit programs as well. Okay. We are FTE funded in the state, so everything is really FTE based. The thing I love about this semester is after having 3 years of virtual learning for the most part, and remember, those kids were in high school and maybe 8th grade. This year, we have more students and more bodies on campus than we have in the last 5 years. We have classrooms that are full. I just love walking by classrooms and seeing no seats, seeing no empty seats, okay, because we haven't seen that in a while. One of the things for us is we were honored to be selected as one of the 15 new schools under NCII, the National Center for Inquiry and Improvement, their Rural Pathways Grant. And we have to have 3 goals. And one of them was converting, first of all, we have done a very good job over the last 7, 8 years, pathways from our workforce programs to credit. So we want to be able to finish that. I'm not sure if you ever finish, but we want to be able to finish that. The second piece is converting all or 95% of our credit programs to 8-week classes. Many of your institutions, larger ones, can offer them in multiple formats. We can't. We did have some pushback initially 3 years ago from faculty, but they have come around because they can see the data now. They can actually see the data. And then the third piece, we are very heavily FTEs, and this semester, headcount wise, just headcount. And remember, we're up 13%, and not all of that is in dual enrollment, but our headcount percentage this semester is 63% of our total credit. So we have many of them complete a certificate or a credential of some kind. One of our third goal is to really get those students to complete an associate degree, to really finish their associate degree, either while they're in high school. And we have a couple of academies that don't lead to associate degrees at this point, but they will be, or be able to turn around and entice those many students to come to us for a semester or no more than 1 year to finish their associate's degree. So that has really made a big difference for us. And the students, your question was around sort of student expectation. Their expectation is we're meeting them. I think about there's a meme out there. There's a picture been out there for many years about how administrators plan campuses and where the sidewalk is. They build a sidewalk this way, but the students actually use that. Right. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is really be able to, and we've talked to students. We said, if we offer this in 8-week terms, this is what this would mean. They love it. And many of our programs are already there, but we're not there completely yet at this point.
No, thanks, John. And And I'm going to put a pin in this, but I want to ask you, I've never heard the term self-scholarshiping, and I've been in fundraising for a long time, so I love that. Um, and John, your comment about the pathways and everything and listening to students, I find that community colleges are at the cutting edge of change, right? We see it firsthand and have the ability and the need to adapt quickly. So, what I'm hearing from all of you, 2025, adapting quickly, listening to your students, and finding those resources. And I love how both John, you and Ann are similarly looking at employers as funders to provide that pipeline. Just and looking at time, I want to make sure we get into 2026. We could spend 3 hours talking about 2025, but we are on the cusp of 2026. So, as what we've learned in 2025, when you look at 2026, what are you thinking about right now as you go into this break, perhaps that you see as the trends? What are the things that you're prepping for after you've learning in 2025? And let me start with Chris.
I mentioned AI already, which I think, look, uh, this is a huge disruptive technology, and it's exploding before, so it's going to continue to need to be a focus for institutional energy, making sure we're not just doing sporadic things, but we're connecting dots and planning for the future and budgeting and everything that goes with that. Uh, I think, we're seeing real growth, some by design and some just by externally, in the number of returning adult students, students with some credits, no degree, the growth of our non-credit continuing education workforce development programs, micro-credentials, that's just continuing to be an increased area of focus, as is early college and high school. And that is growing dramatically, and we're able to get students to our associate degree a week or two before they graduate high school. And so that's been really exciting. Those two pieces are, of course, surrounding our more traditional emphasis on students in our 2-year academic pathways. And so the whole balancing act of integrating non-credit and credit and really ensuring that when micro-credentials that meet industry recognized standards are developed, they are developed at the outset with faculty input nested in academic credit pathways, and it's seamless for students to move from micro-credentials into a pathway that can take them all the way to a doctorate if they want to, and make that really user-friendly and student-friendly. It's a huge body of work that'll continue to expand next year. I think going forward, partnerships have never been more important in our sector. I know in our case, everything we're doing that we are proud of, and we're proud of almost everything we're doing. I mean, we have lots of points of pride. They're almost always made possible through partnerships. So just a couple of examples. We're fortunate to be working with Lumina Foundation on their Future Ready States initiative. New Jersey was chosen as one of 12 pilot colleges that they will be helping through financial and other support to contribute to their goal of having 75% of our population possessing a credential of value, quote unquote, by the year 2040. That's going to continue to just guide and support the work that I just mentioned. We're also very focused on partnerships with the New Jersey Business and Industry Association that's bringing industry and business into our 2- and 4-year college spaces, working in tandem around centers of excellence to bring everyone's strengths to the table and ensure that there are outcomes greater than the sum of their parts. The other one I just want to mention, because we have Ann Kress here, one of the things we've been working on in the partnership arena is taking seriously the fact that our missions are at the nexus of K-12 through 4-year and graduate education. And we believe, and we're trying as an institution, but I believe it's true of our sector, we, by our very mission and by the work we do, we have the opportunity, and I would say really obligation, to be playing a leadership role in connecting dots between K-12, our institutions, 4-year graduates, in a way that's student-centered and student-friendly, informed by data and best practice, and gets students to the finish line, which becomes win-win-win. Win for us, win for 4 years, a win for families and students. And we've been working on getting to the next level of excellence with regard to how we prepare students for transfer to 4 year schools. And we're part of the Aspen Askew Transfer Intensive project a couple of years ago. And through all that work, we learned about an inspirational model at Northern Virginia and
I've heard of that school.
Northern Virginia Community College and George Mason University. And they inspired us to develop a model we call Connect. And we are now adapting it to all of our senior partners, whereby, and the principles essentially are, we first of all, we work together, both institutions, to ensure that every pathway is limited to 120 credits, no duplicative or additive credit, except for things like nursing and some exception areas. Two, students have a common coach, mentor, advisor from the moment they start with us until they finish the bachelor's at the partnering institution. Three, they're co-enrolled from the get-go. They can use the facilities, resources, and support systems at both institutions throughout their journey. And this model is creating new opportunity, but for both institutions to recruit students they wouldn't have otherwise served, but also to get students to the finish line. I know when our new students arrive, 95% of them say, I want to earn a bachelor's degree or beyond. We need to find new models that get them there. And then the final piece of this, we're fortunate to be under construction with an 11-story new Center for Student Success that is going to have a dedicated university center, classroom and office space that will allow our senior partners to actually bring their junior, senior year courses and programs onto our campus where our students already feel comfortable.
That's amazing, Chris. And I love the visual of a finish line being defined by the students and you partnering with them to make sure that you're there shoulder to shoulder with them along the way is really just exactly the kind of things that embody the mission of us in community colleges. Tracy, Northeast up in Nebraska, you're probably one of, if not, I'm going to embarrass you by saying that you're probably one of the most accomplished institutional advancement professionals in the country and have started doing some things recently over the past few years that are looking agriculturally at 2026 and beyond. What are some of the things as you're developing with your team that you look for as you're building for the future?
Well, thank you for that shout out. I do appreciate that.
It's true. We've known
Well,
each other a while, and it's true.
thank you. When I came to Northeast Nebraska 14 years ago, I really looked to, what is that thing that makes us unique? What is that thing where we can stand out above and beyond anyone else? And agriculture was that. We have one of the largest, it is our single largest area of study when you take all of our ag programs together and make it into one. We've got over 400 students in ag alone. And so I began to lift up that work and began to look for partners to do that work. And I went to USDA and said, how can you help us? And over time, we've developed a really unique partnership. We don't get competitive grants from them. We do cooperative agreements with them. And it's an ongoing long-term relationship where we're meeting their needs and they're helping us meet our needs. So it's a different partnership with the federal government that I think hasn't been done a lot. And I think that's something we need to think about more, right? So what we were able to do is it started as a small group of institutions working together and it's grown over time. We're now 24 institutions in 19 states. We want to be over 50 by the next few years. And we're really looking about how to integrate technologies and transform agriculture and what that looks like. And both urban and rural colleges we're bringing together. I really think we need to get creative at how we look for funding. So when you talk about partnerships, they're so critical. Chris, you mentioned that, but I think the federal government, they're downsizing, right? They're taking away staff. They can't roll out grant programs like they used to. They're going to be doing it in bigger chunks with fewer institutions. That means you're going to have to come together as a group of institutions to be able to access that fund. You're not going to be able to do it as a single small institution, right? And we also know that a lot of dollars are going to be funneling down to the state level. So how do you build those relationships? How do you do things at a statewide level? I love some of those conversations about your four-year partners. How do you look at that? I'll give you a couple examples. One is we're working with statewide with the Nebraska Manufacturing Alliance. We are developing level 1, 2, 3 credentials, micro credentials, right? That the whole state is using within their programming. And we are receiving Department of Labor funding from the state, which is actually federal dollars that are flowing to the state to be dispersed, right? And we're going to get like $9 million over the next 3 years to do this work. It is at the state level that's happening, but it's dollars that are coming from the federal government. So, I mean, I think we need to think differently. We're also doing the same thing. We know rural healthcare funds are coming out to support rural hospitals. We know they need workforce. How can we recreate what we're doing? So we're working with the Nebraska Hospital Association to do that work. We're doing it statewide. So when I think about what we're doing in ag, that's just one example. It's a microcosm of, I think, what you can do in a lot of different industries. And when you think about things like AI and automation and robotics and how quickly they're transforming the industry, you really need to think about, okay, let's come together as a group of institutions. Let's focus our efforts on doing some of these things together. Because why should we each do it separately? It takes too many resources to do that. We don't have that. And so how can we partner together? We just wrote a Department of Ed FIPSI grant. I'm sure you guys all were working on that the last couple of weeks, right? And we worked with a four-year partner. We're doing some AI kits, and we're going to be putting them through our programs, and we're going to be distributing them across the country to our colleges. That is the type of work that needs to be done because we can't do it alone as single institutions.
No, so well said. And that's one of our greatest strengths as collegial community of community colleges, a lot of community and collegial in there, that we all partner together for the benefit of those we serve. And from your perspective, I know you shared a lot, but what are the things that you're gearing up for in 2026 in your institution?
Sure. I will put two things out there. One is that, and this topic has already come up this afternoon, but affordability is going to be key in 2026, right? You can't watch the news, read the newspaper. I'm sure if I were on TikTok and getting my news from there, I would also still hear about affordability, right? And the lack of affordability. And, there is no better way to make higher education affordable than to invest in community colleges and to go to a community college. I had to laugh. It's holiday season. I was at a reception the other night, was in an elevator with somebody I'd never met before who looked at my little Nova and said, "Oh, do you work at the community college? Community colleges are the future of this country." And I said, "Did you go to a community college?" And he said, "No, absolutely not. I went to Harvard." And I was like, "Oh, okay." But he said, "But I tell your story. And it's a story of quality, exceptional quality, and incredible affordability." So just to make it real, right, for families in this region who might be looking at a very different financial future, if their sons and daughters begin in dual enrollment in one of our local high schools, that's at no cost. Then they come to Nova, and we're 40 to 50% the cost of a Virginia public institution. So they've saved money there, right? The State Council on Higher Education for Virginia has indicated that if students get their 2-year degree associates first at Nova, at John's institution, at any public community college in Virginia, those families are going to save more than $20,000 on the cost of a bachelor's degree. Right. So, and then it's also about time to degree. So Chris kindly mentioned the advanced program. So one of the things we know about advanced is that it reduces time to degree, which is one of the great undiscovered costs of higher education, right? The longer your degree pathway takes, the more you're paying for it, not just in real cost, but in opportunity cost. So I think affordability is going to be a watchword going into 2026. And then the other thing I'll mention is re-engagement. So we hear a lot about all of those individuals out there who have some college but no credential. Forget degree. They don't even have an industry recognized credential or a certificate, right? So one of the things that Nova has really leaned into is reconnecting with students who are within a very short distance of earning that credential. So we've been partnering with our foundation around what they've been calling last mile scholarships to help these students who might have run out of financial aid close that gap up and become completers, right? We're working with Inside Track to reach out to individuals who are within just 15 credit hours of finishing their associate degree from NOVA and helping us to understand what is it going to take to help those students get across the finish line. Sometimes it's money. Sometimes it's changing our academic schedule. Sometimes it's giving them credit for prior learning, right? So again, I think to make sure that we can re-engage learners who maybe we haven't served as well as we should have, and we need to own that, we need to think about our own flexibility and our own responsiveness. But that's really what we're taking into 2026.
Great, thank you. John, from the other side of Virginia, literally, talk about what you're gearing up for in 2026.
Yeah, I could almost say ditto to my three colleagues here because certainly partnerships, and again, Tracy knows this, but it was really refreshing to hear from Chris and Ann that even larger institutions, partnerships are so critical. We cannot do things in rural areas alone. We absolutely cannot. We do not have, I have no bench. I have one person departments. So we do not have the capacity to be, so being able to partner with workforce boards and economic development groups and so forth. AI, Chris, we're just learning to spell it, and then we will be able to do that. We have an AI committee. I'm actually on the AI committee, so because I use ChatGPT every day, but that doesn't mean I'm any expert in AI and being able to do that.
But John, at least you didn't say A1.
That's correct. That's correct.
That's what I was going to say, but
the focus that Ann mentioned, and this is a focus from our chancellor statewide, is really re-engaging those adults. Those individuals who maybe did not have a chance to go to college, or they, whatever happened, and they could have been 3 years ago, or could have been 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, and being able to do that. The one thing, though, that I still think is going to be coming, and I would probably say this every year, but private fundraising is going to become even more and more important, because where are we getting emergency funding for our students from? Most likely. Now, we may get some from the state, we may get some from our statewide foundation and everything, but locally, emergency funding, program development. Most states do not have seed money for program development. And so private fundraising is going to be even more important as we look. Yeah, federal grants are going to be, they're still there. They're still important. State grants, but you're engaging with your community foundations, your statewide potential foundations, and everything on those types of things. And yes, I am talking about capacity building grants that really, sometimes I'm afraid to apply for a grant because it doesn't come with people to actually manage the grant, because then it just becomes, oh, this is the 9th thing I'm asking one person to lead. Okay. So private fundraising, whether it's individuals, corporations, private foundations, are going to become even more important to really, that gap is going to be really, I think it's going to be wider coming in 26 than it has been in 25, 24, et cetera.
No, and fundraising is always important. And I couple questions, and I'll direct them first to Chris and then to Tracy. We've talked a lot about models of delivery being different, and that there's multiple ways to impact our constituencies. Funding all of this, no longer are the days of single source funding, right? Like, I'm in a state, they give me 80%. Those days are over. Diversified, sustainable, comprehensive fundraising is what makes it. Chris, I know you and back history. Chris and I have known each other well. Chris used to work at a kind of a rural college outside of Pittsburgh. So you've seen fundraising from a smaller basis to now a more urban basis. As you look at the future, how are you tooling up your funding model to meet these multiple pathways that you all are discussing?
Well, consistent with what John and you were saying, growing our endowment is a principal focus going forward. Our institution has historically not had a focus on endowment and major gift fundraising. That has become a focus over the last 4 or 5 years. We built the infrastructure, and now it's all about raising money for the endowment so that we have a perpetual stream of funding that we can use to help mitigate challenges beyond our control and loss of funding at the local, state, and federal levels, and also to preserve a margin of excellence, the perpetual stream of endowment funds. So that's one way. But I'm going to, and of course, now I think we're in an environment where it's not just about grant writing, it's about choosing the right grants. And then capitalizing on, we got a FIPSI out too in less than 3 weeks, a $4 million proposal, fingers crossed, workforce Pell. But here's the other piece I want to share. Our college community pre-pandemic and then ever since has been focused on two fundamental priorities. Student success, meaning using data and best practice to inform continuous improvement around retention and degree completion, transfer student goal attainment. And yes, I'll use the words diversity, equity, and inclusion as one of the most diverse populations in the United States. I think Jersey City is considered the most diverse city in the United States. 87% of our students are non-white, 56% are Hispanic. Leveraging that rich diversity to reach increasingly higher levels of excellence in service of our mission, and along the way, addressing historic equity gaps and achievement gaps so that all students succeed. We joined Achieving the Dream. That helped us focus the work. Along came the pandemic. We had some opportunity to invest federal stimulus funds in expanding a small program the state funds here each year for very at risk for not completing students to a much larger population of students. And what we found was spending the money up front to get students into a model where they have an academic coach and mentor with a very low caseload of students who's with them, where they get financial stipends each month when they achieve an established milestone, high impact practices, faculty taking students to Broadway plays, museums, 500 companies, and investing in technology like EAB Navigate, EAB Edify, and others. When we invested in bringing many more students into this model, the retention impact over time, as we've been measuring it, has been so great that actually the enhanced retention versus our historic retention rates has brought the institution more revenue than the initial cost of seed investment required to get them into the model. Out of this came a program we've won awards for called Hudson Scholars, and we're now scaling it to all students. It's changed my whole leadership philosophy. Here's what I believe we need to be doing increasingly going forward. Investing in student success. There are proven models. We know what works in our sector. Finding the funding to invest in getting more students to the finish line. And when students succeed, it brings revenue. And we're actually doing this mission-centric work that's moving the needle on delivery of our mission is also increasing our financial strength as an institution. So we no longer measure ROI on the basis of investments in the traditional short-term way. Auxiliary enterprises have to be a financial tub that rests on its own feet. We look at the ROI in terms of how the investment impacts the longer-term goal of student completion. And so I think that there are a bunch of different things that are both challenges, but also opportunities for us.
Absolutely. And Chris, Tracy, this is a question for you. Chris mentioned the E word, endowment, as a fundraiser. That's something a lot of schools want and a lot of schools need, but a lot of schools don't have. Talk about your fundraising and how you're, in addition to meeting all the needs that are at any other school, all this new agricultural program. So how are you meeting all of these funding needs? What sort of things are you doing?
So Joe, I will tell you that when I came to this institution at the beginning of 2013, our endowment was $4 million. Today it is $58 million.
How did you do that?
So, well, a number of things. You know, one, we were fortunate to receive a Mackenzie Scott gift for 15 million. So that was a chunk. But the rest was is legitimate hard work, things that we've really implemented and things that we've done. We implemented a gift fee and administrative fee, and those go into an unrestricted fund, which then we can build up and hire more staff. So I went from a staff of 1 to a staff of 5. We've been able to braid funds together. We really focus on a narrow fundraising efforts are on a narrow group of things that we can do institutional wide. And so when you said you really focus on what you go after and make sure you can be highly effective. I mean, we are effective because we get 80% or more of the funds that we ask for, right? We don't spend time on things we don't think we can get. We focus on a few things and we do them really, really well and go deep. That allows us to do more. And you braid resources together. You create opportunities. Snap E&T was one I talked about earlier, but I tell you, that can bring in millions of dollars to your institution if you do it right. But it also takes you rethinking how you deliver your services. And then the other thing, Joe, I'm going to mention real quickly, one thing that I'm going to be doing this next year that I think we'll see more colleges adopt is this idea of a comprehensive campaign.
Yeah.
So we are doing our new strategic plan. This past year, our president has been to communities, boards, different groups all across the community, employers, all of it. We've talked to over 1,000 people, getting feedback on our next version of our strategic plan. And when we roll that out next summer for the next fiscal year, for the next 5 years, we are going to roll with it a comprehensive campaign talking about how we fund those needs. What are those things within that we really need to fund and how we need to bring our partners. So we're going to leverage telling that story with our fundraising. And so we're going to raise money at the same time we're doing this important strategic work and I'll focus on a few efforts that we can really drive home and do well. So that's just a few things. Um, I have spent a lot of time with the private foundations, and I am developing a lot of proposals around capacity building because that's how we do the work. We can't do it otherwise, and it's so hard to get these funding from other sources. So if I would say one thing, if you have some private foundations that you could work with, spend some time finding out what their needs are, what their interests are, and really try to match. And it's sort of this iterative thing. You go back and forth. They say, well, I'm not interested in this, but what about this? And it's this back and forth, and you can really develop some amazing things. And we're getting to the point where we have multiple things going on, projects at the same time with one foundation. It's really cool to see, and they're really investing in us. And it's coming at a time when we're losing state funds and everything else. So they see the value and they want to make sure we can be successful.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's amazing. And comprehensive campaigns that are, as you discussed, are simply the maturity, I think, of community colleges coming into the fundraising world and the trust by workforce, individuals, foundations to invest in the day-to-day operations because they see the results. So kudos to you and to all of you for expanding the fundraising to be into those kinds of things. We have just a few minutes left, so I want to ask each of you one last question. And I'll start just to prep. I'll start with you, John. From your perspective, what's your one wish? Look in the crystal ball and say, 3 years from now, what is your one wish for
I
community
don't get three
colleges?
wishes. I
You
don't
get
get three
one,
wishes. I get
you
one
get
wish.
one wish. That is it. But
Well, I think I wish for, so I've been in community colleges for 35 years, and I think I wish this every year that community colleges are funded at the capacity level that we deserve to be funded. And because we do an amazing amount of things, and I feel like can I have more at the end, where you're asking for bread and water. Can you just imagine if we were fully funded, or if we were at that 80%, Joe, which most of us are not at 80%. If we were at that 80%, what could we do for our communities? And it would be amazing. That's what my wish is.
And the crystal ball now gets passed to you for your one wish of the future of community colleges.
So I'm going to plus one John's because it's great. And then I would say, I've been working in community colleges for more than 30 years as well. And my wish would be that we would stop being the best kept secret, right? We should be at the top of everyone's list. Everyone should know the power, the transformational power of the community college in their backyard. And as a country, we should recognize the power of this uniquely American higher education engine. So that would be my wish.
I love it. Yeah. I had hair when the first time somebody said we're the greatest kept secret, and we are uniquely situated to change lives, but also be the economic future of the regions that we're in. Who else can say that? Thank you. Very, very well said. Chris, what is your one wish for the future?
I'll plus one John and Ann. Both of them. We need to stay true to our mission. Uh, Keep our focus and all the noise on getting all students to the completion of to realizing their goals and life dreams, to credential completion, goal achievement, transfer, gainful employment. Because here's the reality, and this is what we need to bring visibility to. When our students succeed, many of them, in the case of Hudson County Community College, most of them are moving from public assistance to taxpayers and to the future workforce that's needed in our nation. And when that happens, all boats rise. It impacts the success of our student, impacts strengthening economy. It helps bring students to our four-year partners. And I think that's where we need to keep our focus. And we're finding when we invest in student success and do the right things up front, actually it brings us revenue and it brings us stability. But we have to be willing to take some educated risks in the process. This, by the way, is how I respond when I'm asked questions about DEI or whatever terminology we're using. This work, regardless of what you call it, is about helping all students succeed, not certain students. We're trying to get all students to the finish line so everyone is realizing their dreams, and that leads to bolstering the outcomes that our whole nation is seeking to achieve. So let's keep our eyes on what we really are about, our students.
Yeah, thank you. Well said, Chris. Tracy, you have last call on what your future one goal would be, and you can build on everybody in front of you. So you get that opportunity, my friend.
Well, and I was going to say, I do see a question in the box, so I might just answer that because I
Go
think
for
I
it.
feel I can tie that into my response, right?
Yep.
So I've talked to you a lot about how we've worked really hard to build this relationship with USDA and create this opportunity for them to see community colleges in a different light. This is an agency that only funded land grant institutions, only funded four-year institutions, and didn't really consider the impact of community colleges. So it's changing one person, one mind at a time. One of the initiatives is around changing the degree requirements for some of their jobs, right? It's not always a four-year degree. It's about competencies and skills. And so we've been in very close conversations about how our degrees provide the skills and the knowledge that they need. And we're going through that process, redefining our programs, making sure that they have what they need. And so they'll hire our students based on that and not on a four-year degree. So one of the questions in the chat here is related to pursuing grants and funds when the labor market data doesn't show that a two-year degree is a credential is what's needed, or it might not just show up because it takes years for that stuff to catch up. And I can tell you, agriculture is the #1 place where that happens. It is extremely difficult. But that's where you bring in your employers, your local employers, and show the demand for the local jobs. You can use Lightcast data to show local job needs and what the requirements are for those based on those local job postings. And you can do surveys to your employers to get that information, but you got to be able to tell that story. And that's what we've been focused on in the ag space. And I think that's made a huge difference. So.
Thanks, Tracy. And thank you for answering that question. And you close with stories, and that's what we all are, right? We're telling the stories of the lives that we all impact. And hearing these stories, how can you not want to support the students that you all see every day and the lives that you lift up and the families and generations that are changed by the work that you all do? We are up against our time. I want to, number one, thank this panel. They're all amazing leaders. And I appreciate and very much I'm grateful for the time that you spent today. Thank you to everybody that attended. A couple things on Convergent. There's a few things. We are, as an organization, really excited to get feedback and to listen to more leaders like Chris and John and Tracy and Ann. So a couple things. We'll be launching in the very near future a newsletter which will contain insights from leaders like you've heard today. And we want you to be a part of that, everybody on this call. So please reach out to me or reach out to, frankly, anybody on this call. And then second, if you are at WDI in late January in New Orleans, John, is that accurate?
That is correct.
Um, we will be hosting a panel that'll include myself, John Rainoni, Dr. Joe Blondin from Clark State, Dr. Villanueva from Lee College, and Dr. Anthony Wise from Pellissippi. So if you're there, please come as we talk more about innovation and insights. So for me, Convergent, I thank you all. Again, thank you, Chris, John, and Tracy. And happy holidays to all. And thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
Thank
You.
you
Thanks,
for
everybody.
attending. Please remember there is a survey link that was sent out in the chat, so please fill that out so we can know what you're wanting to hear about. Hope everybody has a great rest of their day.
Thank you.
Thanks all.